Disney Star Wars has copied George Lucas' worst habit, and it's got to change. Disney Star Wars has continued to lean on George Lucas' worst habit, and it's not doing Star Wars movies and TV shows any favors. When Disney bought Star Wars, there was rampant concern about what this would mean for the future of the franchise. Many worried that Disney would sanitize these stories, making them skewed to an even younger audience. That largely hasn't happened. Andor is a great example of Disney Star Wars' willingness to go very dark, but complaints remain about this acquisition and the supposed ruining of Star Wars. Yet, there's plenty that Disney has kept from the Star Wars creator, unfortunately including one strategy he used to fix mistakes. Animated Star Wars shows have become a beloved part of the franchise. In fact, some of Star Wars' best TV shows, such as Star Wars, The Clone Wars, are animated and continue to define the franchise's future. While they're enjoyable in their own right, though, George Lucas did use them as a bit of a crutch. This is especially true of the prequel trilogy and The Clone Wars. There was a host of complaints about the prequel trilogy, ranging from audiences feeling like Anakin's fall happened too quickly to the way the clones were treated by the Jedi. Both issues, along with many others, were addressed in The Clone Wars. The Clone Wars was arguably essential to Anakin Skywalker's Star Wars timeline for that very reason. While I felt Anakin's fall was depicted believably in the prequels, there's no denying that the level of additional context The Clone Wars provides, particularly with the introduction of story arcs with Ahsoka Tano, completely improves it. The same can be said of the Clone Troopers and The Clone Wars. In Star Wars, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones were little more than faceless soldiers, despite being living, breathing people as well. Star Wars, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith was a bit better, as we saw some relationship between Commander Cody and Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, it was the Clone Wars and eventually Star Wars, The Bad Batch as well, that really fleshed the clones out and respected their humanity. The Clone Wars also introduced the clones' inhibitor chips, which explained why they would turn on the Jedi and cleared their names in a sense. This isn't to say I'm against the animated shows. I absolutely love these shows, and I'm forever grateful for the amazing characters and stories they've introduced into the franchise. I can't help but feel frustrated that the animated shows are often used to correct issues, though, and that's proven true, and worse, for Disney Star Wars as well. Unfortunately, Disney Star Wars has taken this approach to another level by using new animated shows in an attempt to address major controversies. This has especially been the case when it comes to problems with the sequel trilogy. Of all the Star Wars projects to date, the sequels remain some of the most heavily criticized. For myriad reasons, one of the biggest controversies was Palpatine's resurrection in Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, which was very unpopular. Many felt this twist was unearned and hadn't been set up in the first two movies. In an effort to provide some insight into this return, The Bad Batch focused in part on Palpatine's clone project, Project Necromancer. Ultimately, The Bad Batch really left more questions than answers on the table when it came to Palpatine's return, but this is a prime example of Disney Star Wars taking something that should have been explained in the movies and working it out, or attempting to in an animated show. The same is true of the treatment of various sequel trilogy characters. It's no secret that The Rise of Skywalker sidelined many characters, but perhaps the character who had it the worst was Rose Tico. In Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Rose seemed like a new leading character, even getting her own arc with Finn. Unfortunately, she was almost non-existent in The Rise of Skywalker. Since then, LEGO Star Wars, Rebuild the Galaxy and its sequel, Pieces of the Past, have featured Sith Rose Tico, giving her considerably more screen time. That feels a bit too little too late on the one hand, but it's also non-canon and doesn't absolve the sequels of this choice. Rebuild the Galaxy also reintroduced Sith Rey, who didn't get nearly enough screen time in The Rise of Skywalker either, although that was more an issue of wasting a brilliant concept than it was a disrespect to the character. Regardless, it's clear that Disney Star Wars is repeating this pattern, and that's a problem. While it's nice to see the return of characters like Rose Tico, Rey, and many others in animated shows, especially when they are voiced by the original actors, Star Wars really needs to prioritize not making these mistakes in the first place, rather than leaning on animated shows to clean up any messes. Rose should not have been sidelined, for example, and it's not enough to give her more time in another project. Likewise, viewers shouldn't have to watch the Clone Wars to appreciate and understand the clone troopers, especially in terms of their inhibitor chips. There's plenty of potential with animated shows, including bringing back characters who can't return in live action for various reasons, but this shouldn't mean that movies can have significant missteps and not worry about it. Hopefully, moving forward, Disney Star Wars will be proactive with issues and drop this troubling George Lucas habit.